I'm just trying to get
Good afternoon and welcome to our first meeting in March. We do have a crowd today, and I don't know, there seems to be not but one more seat, so a couple of seats, so please feel free to find those seats if you need to. Invocation tonight will be led by myself, and respect to the flag will be led by Councilman Kyle Newton. Please rise. Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the many blessings that you have placed upon our community. We ask that you, as an organization, that you keep your hand on our first responders, that when they go into harm's way, that you protect them, and that they're the most vulnerable people in our organization. We ask that you protect all of our team as they face outward toward our community. We ask that you put your hand on this council as we make policy decisions in regards for our city, our community. We ask all these things in your name. Amen. Amen. So the minutes of our February 28th meeting were distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
make a motion that we approve them as presented, Mr. Mayor.
First by Mr. Stewart. Second by Mr. Jeff Roberts. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes of February 28th passed unanimously. We have 3 items of old business, and the first item of old business is request consideration of an ordinance to rezone lots 38 and 39 of River Heights Circle from a R5 single-family residential to HI heavy industrial. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. Mayor and Council, as you know, the Council saw this earlier and recommended this or referred this to the Planning Commission. They did meet on March the 1st. They unanimously recommended approval. This comes before you on first reading. Mr. McKenzie, our Planning Development Director, will go over the details. Mr. McKenzie.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Again, the applicant proposes to rezone this property from R5 single-family residential to HI heavy industrial to construct a building that will serve as an extension of the existing industry, which is directly across the street on River Heights Circle. And the building will be used mainly for the storage of materials for this business, and they are expanding, so they're needing more room. The business is Carolina Custom Converting, which really deals with types of film, which is used in different aspects of the marketplace. Again, more storage is needed, and they're looking to construct a 60 by 80 building on the piece of property across the street. The property, again, is zoned R5, single-family residential, which essentially allows single-family houses on lots that are at least 5,000 square feet, obviously no industrial-type uses. So they are needing to get it rezoned, and heavy industrial would be the most appropriate classification, mainly because it's compatible to what it is across the street. In the general area, you have various zoning classifications. You have R5 single family, you have LI, light industrial, and HI, heavy industrial. Again, this looks to be a significant jump in zoning from R5 single family residential to HI, heavy industrial. But again, there's a couple of factors involved there. Directly, or actually on either side of this property, you have warehouse type buildings that are actually zoned R5 single family residential. They are non-conforming. Probably should be industrially zoned properties at some point when we revisit the zoning ordinance. But again, the Planning Commission considered this request earlier this month. On March 1st, they unanimously recommended approval of this, mainly because it is across the street from an industrial classification, and on either side of it, you have warehousing, industrial type buildings on the property. If it is rezoned on the back, it does abut residential, so they would have to abide by our landscaping and screening requirements to provide that buffer. Any questions? And the applicant is here if you have any specific questions.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Questions? Comments? Roberts.
This is in the seat that I represent, seat 3. And if anything, it looks like the surrounding area is more appropriate to be rezoned HI. There are some houses dotted in there, but that grouping of buildings right there, I think is most appropriate HI. And I think at the very end of your recommendation, we're going to look at those adjacent properties in the near future to bring them into that same compliance.
That's right. Yes, sir.
So with that, I recommend that we rezone this parcel from R5 to HI.
First by Mr. Jeff Roberts. Second by Mr. Lockhart. Any further comment? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously on the first reading. Our next item of old business is request second reading of ordinance 22-03 to establish a tree density requirements for new development. Ms. McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen, Mayor, Council. You have before you a request for second reading of an ordinance that would establish minimum tree density standards for all new developments in the city. That tree density would be 130 inches per acre that would have to be saved or replanted on a site, whether it's residential or commercial. For residential development, obviously a tree survey would be required prior to development to know what was there to begin with. Street trees would also be required along public and private roadways. Essentially mass grading, as we know it today, where you grade multiple pieces of property or building lots at a time, would essentially be eliminated. And you'd have to maintain existing trees or plant new ones if there are none on the site. What you have in front of you today, after a work session, there are a couple of tweaks to that. This does apply only to developments, residential developments of 4 lots or more containing single or 2-family residences. And that street tree piece as well was a new requirement. And that street tree language was taken out of the guidance document, which is essentially just a commentary on the code. I was taken out of that commentary, that guidance document, and actually put in the code itself. For commercial development, there's an incentive to keep and incorporate large specimen trees. Similarly, there are penalties for removing specimen trees throughout the community. It would be considered just like any other code enforcement action that we see throughout the city. And again, I did mention that guidance document just is there to help answer questions about calculations, pruning, and maintenance techniques, and it also contains the tree list for the city. And I will say another important exemption that was added in is individual building lots. So essentially, if you're an existing or new individual building lot, you have no tree requirements necessarily. Those are all just for new development of 4 lots or more. So any sort of redevelopment activity in the city that goes on an existing lot of record would not be required any additional trees. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Strickland, and we obviously have looked at this document. We've had work session and we had it on our agenda before. But at this time, I'd open it up to any other questions that anyone might have. Ms. Stewart?
First question I have is the enforcement of the ordinance. What department would that fall under? Would it be under the planning department or under our building and codes?
Well, it would be primarily under our planning department with developments. New developments would have to actually be reviewed by several departments in the city. That process is managed by our planning department. So
Getting ready for that.
That's right.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
And the second question is that for street trees, just want to make sure I understand. It talks about, when street trees are planted and if they're in the right of way, then they're either maintained by the HOA or the closest property owner. Well, I can't build anything in the right of way because DOT or whoever else, tells you can't build in it. Well, if there's trees planted in the right of way, why is myself as a property owner got to maintain something that I don't even own the land for?
Yeah, and that's a very good question. So it's similar to any grassy strip that you see out in the right-of-way, kind of between the curb and the sidewalk. That's the area primarily we're talking about, and it's going to vary between development to development. But really and that's going to be stipulated early on in the development plans. So there's going to be a note that kind of puts everybody on notice that purchases a lot in a new development, for instance, that those individual trees are either going to be maintained as a community good by the subdivision, by the HOA itself, or if the developer or the HOA would rather, each individual property owner would have to maintain those, and that's going to have to be spelled out. So
That's what I'm looking at too, is like street trees as they get 15, 20 years down the road. And I don't know, depending on, they may not be in the area where public utilities are, but they may be hanging over public utilities, power lines or whatever else. Well, is the utility companies going to have to follow the same thing? Because they'll come down there and just chop them trees. But then as me as a property owner, since I'm responsible for that tree, based upon this, I don't want to be held responsible for something somebody else did.
yeah, I think some of the issues we see with utilities and trees are essentially because the wrong tree was planted in the wrong location. Duke Energy maintains their lines fastidiously, right? So I mean, they get in there and they make sure that those suckers are cut back and far away from their lines. So it's really important early on as we plan neighborhoods and plan where plantings go, that if there are overhead utilities, that we're encouraging people to plant smaller trees so we don't have those conflicts, right? So we don't plant oak trees under a power line that's going to have to be topped or cut down in the future, or dies, and that sort of thing.
And of course, Mr. Stewart, as you know, and we just talked about, but in new developments, you're seeing the underground utilities put in, so that helps out. Of course, there could be still some overhead lines in other places, and where you place those trees is important. So,
Thank you. Mr. Horvath?
Real quick, could you, the overall tree density required 130 calipers inches per acre, and let's throw out that they're not going to get any credit for saving any trees, and let's just say it's a quarter-acre lot, and so that's 32.5 caliper inches. Can you just explain that a little bit for me again, and just help me understand exactly what's that going to look like in a quarter-acre lot?
Sure. So, a caliper inch is a typical measurement. And so you mentioned in your example, there'd be no existing trees on the lot. So there'd be all replanted trees. So essentially, if it's a quarter-acre lot, that's 32 caliper inches. That's just a typical measurement of a new tree, of a replanted tree, a foot off the ground. So in that case, you're given freedom on how big the trees are at planting size. So, for 32 caliper inches, that's essentially 8 4-inch trees, right? Or 16 2-inch trees, that sort of thing. And the multiple works for, you can go up. We planted 10-inch trees in the North Main Commons Plaza. So, I mean, you can plant really big trees if you need to.
And would they get any, in a new development, I guess my example was bad, because they'll get some, if they save existing trees and not just mass grade, or whatever you want to call it, knock down all the trees, if they save the specimen big trees, they get a credit back that can be used throughout the development?
That's right. So, throughout the development is a good way to say it, right? So if you save a specimen tree, you're rewarded more for saving a larger, more important tree by 3 times. You can count that credit 3 times throughout the development. So that earns greater points, essentially, for your entire development.
Thank you.
I'm going to say that when we first started this process, I wasn't too much in favor of this. But as we have changed the document, and as we have made it clear to the local folks that are in the city, this will not affect them, only to new building that goes on. I think it's an excellent idea, and I think it gives people the choice of when they go to their homes, they can cut their trees down, whatever they need to do, whenever they need to do it. So I'm totally in favor of this, and I would like to see this passed, so I'd like to make the motion that we pass the tree agenda.
We have a first on the floor, Ms. Lockridge, a second by Mr. Newton. Further discussion? Mr. Roberts?
I have several observations and comments I would like to make. Because, Mr. Harbin, I didn't know what 130 caliper inches per acre looks like, so I did my own survey in my own yard. I went out and measured every tree. I have an acre and a half, so by the calculations, I'm supposed to have 195 caliper inches. I have a lot of mature trees, and if you just do the simple math and don't take the 2 times the credit for specimen trees, I counted 876 caliper inches in my yard. And if you take that 2 times the specimen tree credit, it jumps up to 1,506. So I am so far beyond 195, it's just by a factor of whatever. So that gave me a little perspective on what that looks like. Now, the flip side of that quarter acre lot, you may not be able to get 16 trees on it or whatever. There are 2 options. You pay into a tree fund, and those trees are put somewhere else. Or you have an appeals process. You can plead your case to the Board of Zoning Appeals. So there are options. If I have any hesitation, there are a couple, is what does it do to affordability? And you got to be sensitive to that. Because the more we add on these regulations, the cost starts ticking up. And what are the unintended consequences? Probably we don't know what those are yet. I've had several people comment that it's complex, and I totally disagree. This document is 18 pages long, and on the 18th page, it's just 1 sentence, so I'm going to just call it 17 pages. The first 7 pages are definitions. So we can just get down to the meat of it in 10 pages. We deal with building and codes every day. I'm a builder. I'm an engineer. The International Residential Code, I went and looked it up today, is 670 pages long. I would consider that complex. The International Building Code is over 700 pages. More complex. So I disregard the complexity part of it. And one final comment, these are my words, but the land upon which we build is equally as important as the building itself that we place on it. And you can't have one without the other. I don't think enough attention has been paid to the way we develop land in the past. So I'm in favor of this.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Mr. Harvey?
One quick thing. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations about this, and I'd like to thank our staff for being patient with our council with the intrusive questions and phone calls. And, this is our first that I know of try at a tree ordinance. And I have great faith in what we've come up with, but we also, can modify it and improve it, which, Mr. Roberts sort of alluded to. We can make it better, and we can continue to improve it. And I think, it's a great, and just appreciate all y'all's help and guidance through all this.
Ms. Stewart?
I'd just like to just hammer home one other thing, because in the areas that I serve and Dr. Thompson serves, we see a lot of infill housing. And we have a lot of companies like Habitat for Humanity, Homes for Hope, who come into low-income areas, and we made it a point to exclude them from this ordinance, because the object is to have those organizations come in and build affordable housing. We just didn't feel like it would be fair to put these additional costs on programs like that who's trying to do good for the community. So I commend the staff for, excluding that, as part of this ordinance, because we do want to have, our low-income areas be affordable for people to come in and to build.
Good comments. Anything else?
Well, I think this is a good ordinance when it comes to new development and trying to make our city the best that it can be. And I agree with Mr. Stewart on the fact that in neighborhoods that's been developed, old neighborhoods, have their trees there for years and years, this would not affect them. I think, though, it probably would with someone who lived in one of these neighborhoods, if they looked at the new development and saw what the tree ordinance meant to them, it might impress them on, say, well, I'll do something in my own yard. But I do feel for the folk who this is going to affect. But I think in the long run, particularly for our new development, this is going to make our city more beautiful. And thinking in that way, I'm going to vote for it.
Thank you. We had a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you to council. When I look at, as Mr. Lockridge, where we started from and where we ended and the number of hours that we spent on this, and thank you to Mr. McEwen and his team. That passes unanimously on the second and final reading. Our third item of old business is request consideration of an ordinance to annex and zone to a PDD, which is a planned development district approximately 30.7 acres located at 601 Simpson Road and an abutting 67.8 acres parcel fronting on Old Williamston Road south of Glenview Middle School. Ms. McEwen.
Mayor and council, as you're aware, our entire region continues to grow significantly, the entire upstate area. We're, of course, seeing that in Anderson County now, certainly in the city of Anderson and around our metropolitan area as well. And, that comes on the heels of a lot of jobs being announced through economic development of the county. A lot of industrial jobs, high-tech manufacturing coming online, and we're having a lot of growth. We're having workforce move in our area. Of course, they need houses. Houses are in very short supply right now. It's been an issue. It's been an issue for attracting workforce, and that workforce is coming, and we continue to grow in the entire upstate region. As I said, is growing on average of 1% each year, and so we're continuing to see that growth. And the tree ordinance, as we continue to evolve. We're doing things well beyond what anybody really in the state's doing as far as growth. There's no slab houses anymore. We had a ordinance on that to address that. There's many other things. The tree ordinance helps address the masquerading and other things. We've done a lot of different things as far as landscaping and these neighborhoods and amenities and so forth. So I just want to commend you on that as we continue to look at growth. This is another growth item in front of you. Again, the houses are much needed. Mr. McKenzie will present this item to you.
Thank you. Again, this request is to annex approximately 98 acres, which consists of two parcels of land, one being along Old Williamston Road and one being along Simpson Road. The piece of property proposal includes a plan to develop 178 townhouse units on 30.7 acres with Simpson Road frontage and 175 houses, single-family detached houses, on 67.8 acres that are off of Old Williamston Road. And this proposal, although it's two different pieces, does include connectivity between the two developments, so you have connectivity onto both Simpson Road and Old Williamston Roads. And a PDD, Planned Development District, zoning classification is requested for both pieces of property. And as you know, when it's a PDD, it has a specific document that outlines all the development standards for the property. It gets very detailed. It really essentially acts as the zoning for the pieces of property. And because these sites have different types of dwelling units and development patterns, the applicant created a PD document for each tract. One being the townhouse development, which is Bailey Creek Commons. And then Bailey Creek Reserve describes the development for the single-family area fronting on Old Williamston Road. The existing zoning, which is in the county, the 30.7 acres that fronts along Simpson Road, is currently zoned RM7, which basically allows multifamily duplex townhouse developments at 7 units per acre. So if you do the math on that, generally speaking, that could allow up to 214 units on the property currently. The existing county zoning on the 67-acre parcel of land that's on Old Williamston Road south of Glenview Middle School, it's currently zoned PDD, Planned Development District, and in 2008 there were some changes made to that document when Glenview Middle School was constructed. It was originally part of a larger piece of property, but it was split off in 2008. But the remainder of the property that we're talking about this evening currently allows single-family houses. And when Glenview Middle was built, it had a certain piece reserved for it, but it appears that it took a little bit more land. So when you look at the PDD document in the county on how it's written, it's kind of tough to tell exactly how many houses would be allowed, but based on our calculations, generally speaking, between 124 and 154 houses could be built on the property right now. The Planning Commission did consider this at their January 4th meeting, and they did recommend approval of it, but since that original submission, as you know, there have been several revisions to this plan based on citizen input, staff input, council input. So the original proposal was for 171 townhomes and 199 single-family dwellings. It now has changed. It is, again, 178 townhouses and 175 single-family dwellings. So essentially that's a net decrease of 17 units total. When the applicant submits a plan such as this, they're required to conduct a traffic study, and resulting from that traffic study, which looks at what needs to be done to serve that development, what was revealed was that a left turn lane is required along Old Williamston Road if you're heading north. It did not state anything for the Simpson Road entrance, but the applicant has stated in their documents that they will add a left turn lane onto Simpson Road. So those are two traffic related items that they will include. And we as a staff, we're aware of traffic concerns in this area, particularly during peak hours. And as a result, the Anderson Area Transportation Study, or ANATS, which is a group of elected officials and appointed citizens charged to identify road projects using federal and state funding, and they evaluate projects in our long-range plan update. And as a matter of fact, we're currently working on our long-range plan update, which should be implemented later this year. And we have already noticed an area of particular interest is the Old Williamston Road corridor. When we're looking at the area, particularly from the intersection of Crestview, Old Williamston, all the way down into the city limits near Calhoun Academy of the Arts. There are several intersections there that need a closer look for potential improvements. So in order for there to be state and federal funding to be used for this, it has to be identified in this plan. So we are working to insert this particular area as an area of high need in our long-range plan that we're working on currently.
In addition to Mr. McKenzie's comments and introduction to the subject, I provided some additional information on your desk in front of you. You have the current county zoning map, which shows developed PDDs as part of Cobb's Glen, along with surrounding county zoning, showing contiguous to the proposed development. You see you have R12 and R15 there as well, contiguous to this development. Also in front of you is a density calculation of the area by neighborhood. You can see, of course, those PDDs in Cobb's Glen have a lot of density to them as opposed to some of the surrounding area. And if you go to the column that's highlighted, the density per acre, you'll see with Bailey Creek Reserve, which is a single family portion of this, has 2.5 units per acre, which is the third lowest in the area. This is what you typically see for a normal residential development. And then the townhomes themselves, Bailey Creek Commons, is 5.8 units per acre, which is also less than the surrounding Charlestown Commons and Newport Commons as well. In addition, when we look at, of course, growth, and we do it from a strategic standpoint, as we've continued to grow the city, and what you had to happen before is a lot of fringe development that creates a lot of inefficiency, just outside of the city. But Anderson is certainly their place, their community, and the city has to pick up those services because they're shopping, they're on the roads inside the city, and so forth. But the services that we look at it from a, of course, public safety standpoint, and you have Station 3, which is on Simpson Road. So if you were to take Station 3 to the entrance of this development, the multifamily side of it, it's 0.9 miles, which is less than 2 minutes by regular driving. We'd put it less than a minute by running lights and sirens to that by fire for the first due engine. And then also, if you were to go to if you didn't cut through there, which they would more than likely would, if they respond to the single family homes, if you just continued on and then you took a left on Old Williamston Road, that's 1.6 miles in under 3 minutes by normal driving. Again, that's different when you're driving a fire truck with lights and sirens. It is a fully staffed Class 1 fire department, manned 24 hours a day, every single day, Class 1, the highest ranking in the country. And then from a police standpoint, as you know, we have a very robust police department, and we're able to provide, we're fortunate enough to provide on calls, not only the primary unit, but there's always a secondary unit that responds and quickly backs up the other officer on all calls. And we're able to do that by the resources that the city's put together for officer safety. And so there would be no issue taking on this area. The county patrol, as you know, is stretched across 700 square miles. They do not have the luxury of having that backup unit. And many times we're backing up the county, and the county's backing up us on different things, and that will always happen on high crime events. However, that's not an issue there. And this is the city's sewer service area. We have plenty of capacity there, plenty of capacity in our lines, and also at our plant. It's in the water service area of Hammond Water, and they already serve this area as well. And I have a few more other things, but I'll preserve those for if there are any questions later.
Thank you.
Just a few details about the specifics of each of the developments. I gave kind of a general overview of what the PDD looks like, but for Bailey Creek Commons, and again, that's the 178 unit townhouse development off of Simpson Road. Again, the city manager mentioned that it equates to 5.8 units per acre. Each of the buildings inside the development will have between 3 and 6 units each. Per our city PDD standards for open space, at least 10% must be open space on any development. This property, for the 30.7 acres, has 46%, or about 14 acres, being open space. Now, some of that is floodplain area, about 3.5 acres of that. But in that open space, it incorporates walking trails as an amenity. The townhouses range in size per the PDD document from 1,500 to 4,000 square feet, so quite a variety there. But your document, as normal, has specific guidelines regarding the types of materials to be used. And as the city manager mentioned a moment ago too, that we have no more slab-on-grade houses. And this is actually applying to the townhouse units out here as well. All dwellings shall have a finished floor elevation a minimum of 12 inches above adjacent grade. So again, no slab-on-grade. That is for the Bailey Creek Commons piece. For the single-family development on Old Williamston Road, again, that is proposed to have 175 single-family houses. That equates to 2.58 units per acre. And for PDD document that's before you, the allowable density from the PDD document for the county is 2.3 units per acre. The minimum lot size as proposed will be 7,000 square feet. Your average lot size, just a little over 9,200 square feet. You do have some lots in there that are actually exceeding 20,000 square feet. I mentioned a minute ago about the 10% open space requirement for the 67 acres. 18% will be open space. That equates to 16.1 acres. And there will be smaller common areas, little pocket parks throughout the development in order to eliminate long stretches of houses throughout the development. This breaks things up. That's something you've done in other developments. And also across from T-style intersections, you have open spaces to help with headlights, people driving down the streets within the development. You will see on the plans that there are walking trails throughout the development, which is a good amenity, and homes will range in size from 1,500 to 4,500 square feet, but the PDD document states that most will be around the 2,200 square foot requirement minimum, and again, no slab-on-grade houses. A few other things, as we just heard from you, Council, you just passed a tree preservation ordinance, so that does have a significant influence on a piece of property such as this. Basically, no more mass grading of the site, so there's more careful attention being made to the site itself, no more indiscriminate removal of trees, planting of trees. In the document, it also states that there is a 25-foot buffer and a berm along the Old Williamston Road frontage for screening purposes. There's a 20-foot buffer along Metz Road, which is to the south. And on the northern side of the property, which abuts middle school, there's a 20-foot buffer as well. And I mentioned that there are pedestrian trails incorporated into this open space. One piece that we did request, we see it's very important, is to have a piece of connection from those trails to Glenview Middle School. So we requested that they work with the school district to have a nice, safe piece of connection between the residential use and the middle school. And that won't solve all the traffic problems, but that could alleviate some traffic in that area. Again, this did go before the Planning Commission back on January 4th. They recommended that. And as we discussed, there have been some changes made to the document since then. We've seen the incorporation of a tree preservation ordinance, and as you know, in your PDD document, you have specific guidelines regarding the types of housing construction, no slab on grade. You have landscaping and screening guidelines, several things that you may not see in the current zoning guidelines that are in the county. That's all I have from the staff. If you have any questions for me, I'll be glad to answer those. Also, if you have specifics about the development, the applicant is here as well.
Thank you, Ms. McKenzie. Obviously, this has been a long process, and we've talked a lot about it. And I understand that that you have a vested interest in this too. We feel like that one of the things that we must do as a municipality is work with advocates like we see tonight, and try to make sure that in what's called in planning is the built environment, and how does that look? And that has to do with transportation. We have to work with a lot of different entities, the county, school districts, hospitals, and so forth. So tonight, what I'd like to do is to hear from you. And usually with a crowd of this size, we can't hear from all of you. So we might have a spokesperson. And that's this young man who raised his hand.
Me young.
Yes, sir. For our records, so we can have good minutes, would you, or anybody who speaks tonight, would you state your name and your address, please? Go ahead.
Yes. My name is Joe Ogden. I'm a board member on the Homeowners Association in Cobb's Glen. I live at 108 Wildcat Cliffs in Cobb's Glen.
Thank you, Ms. Ogden.
Beg your pardon?
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Before I begin, I'd simply like to make a comment about our working with the city on this issue. I didn't expect the cooperation, frankly, that I've seen from Mr. McKenzie. He's been very open and very transparent and very helpful. I worked with a lot of senior executives who are very talented in my career, and I believe he ranks right up there with them. I think you're lucky to have him. Now, having said that, I disagree with where we're going. And I'd like to tell you why. As you can see, the room is packed here tonight. This proposed project has hit a nerve. We have a serious problem in our community with congestion on the intersections. And I'd like to ask my wife now to give you a few photographs of that concern at each intersection that abounds the proposed property. We think that the proposal itself is way over this. We believe it's in the wrong location, that there's already too much congestion, dangerous congestion in this location, and that we think the timing could not be worse. There are already over 1,000 homes approved and being constructed in this area, on top of the congestion that we have here, 600 of which are located right at the intersection of Midway and Crestview. The photographs that you're looking at form the heart of our concern. Each one of these intersections have at least 25 cars backed up trying to get through the intersection. This occurs twice a day, 5 days a week. Now, I know you've had a traffic study done by the developer, but I'll bet you didn't see this. This requires more than just a couple of left-hand turns. All the left-hand turns do is allow 700 more cars out into the mix. And how do you think those intersections would look then? How do you think they would look with 2,000 more cars from the 1,000 homes that are already proposed? When we get a proposal with such a high density, first of all, we don't think it fits the character of the neighborhood where it is. Cobb's Glen happens to be 1.5 homes per acre. This turns out to be 4.4 across the street. The townhomes are 16 homes per acre. It's kind of a fuzzy math when we use 30 acres times 7 homes per acre, and you come up with 210 or 214. You can't build on half of that property. It's lake, it's wetlands, it's a holding pond. They can only build on 11 acres. Now, the issue isn't so much that it's dense, it isn't so much that it doesn't fit in the area. I'm not sure this is the way you want to develop Anderson. We know that homes need to be developed, but not on this property. There's got to be plenty of places where the congestion doesn't exist. We made this argument to the Planning Commission in this room on the 4th of January. There were 5 commission members present. And it seemed as though we were making progress in getting our message understood. They seemed to be sympathetic. And it appeared as though at least 3 were agreeing with what we were having to say. At the very end, when the vote took place, one of the commissioners says, aha, he's already got approval to build it in the county. We're only 2 units difference, and we can keep him from doing slab on grade. That was an incorrect statement. He does not have approval by the county to build. That's awfully important. You have a decision to make independent from the county. They're not involved, nor can he go there and get approved in the current state. We went to the county, and we spoke with the county manager of the planning department. In fact, the whole department was in the conference room with us. We wanted to find the genesis of that planning document that was made in 2008. We wanted to find out what it meant, how it transpired, and how it be interpreted today. Because there's some fuzzy math about RM7. What does it mean? Is it 7 units for acres that you're building, or is it 7 units for all of the property that you own? And you can build them on 1/3 of that property. If somebody owned 100 acres and it was RM7, he could typically build 700 units. But what if he wanted to make a lake out of 90 of those acres to go fishing and put all 700 homes on the 10 acres or 70 homes an acre? That would be fitting with the RM7? It's ridiculous. We feel the same way about looking at 30 acres on Simpson, offering 214 jammed into 11 acres. That's 16 homes an acre. And so it's one thing about the density, but what we're concerned about is not just the number of homes, but the number of cars. As you can see by these talk to the fire chief on Station 3, on Simpson Road. And I said, would you have trouble getting back through some of these intersections that are jammed? He says, we don't go back there. That's county. I said, well, what if it were city? What if it was annexed? And he said, oh, all we do is on the lights and the siren, they'd get out of the way and we wouldn't have any trouble. Well, look at those pictures again. These are 2-lane county roads embanked down to the road itself with no shoulders. Where are those cars going to go when an EMS unit, which is a truck, an ER rolling truck, comes down there? Or a fire truck? How are they? They can't get off the road. Then you have a couple of cars coming at you that have gotten through the intersection. So the fire truck's over on the left-hand side trying to get up there. And what are they going to do? They're going to have to back up all the way back to the intersection, by which time another car's probably come. So the fire truck either has to turn around or back down to the intersection so he can turn around. Emergency vehicles have minutes to get their folks to the hospital or to put a fire out. And if they get delayed by backups like this, now this is today. This isn't tomorrow when another 1,000 homes are going to be built. The last thing we need is to approve another 350 homes without having this fixed. So when we went to the county and we said, how do you measure this RM7? They were very non-committal, quite honestly. They said, well, kind of depends on the topographical situation. It depends on the other surrounding area, how the land is laid out. It would all depend. They would not be pinned down to say, yeah, it's got to be what the land is built on. Then we asked the $64 question. If this proposal were presented to you, if the city had nothing to do with this and they came to you, would you approve it? And the answer was no, not without looking at it all over again. A lot has changed since 2008, particularly what you're looking at in these intersections. And so that process would be starting all over. At which point, we would want to wrestle this RM7 issue to the ground. We haven't here. What we did was, we then came back through the planning department and said, look, this RM7 number seems to be pretty nebulous. It's tough to pin down. We'll quit arguing. We won't run this to the ground. But what isn't nebulous is the current PD of 57 units in the front, which are larger units on the Williamston Road, and 97 in the back, for a total of 154. What we'd be willing to do, the builder or developer stood here where I am right now, January 4th, says, I want to be a good neighbor. I want to work with the folks. Let's see if we can work this out. So we figured, fine. We went back to the planning department and said, look, make this proposal. We'll quit arguing about the 171. We don't like it. We don't think it's right. But we don't have time to wrestle this one to the ground. What isn't nebulous is the 154 units. If he'll agree to do what the PD calls for at the 154, leave the 171 alone, we'll support him. We'll welcome him as a neighbor. We'll work together to try and solve the other problems. That was in about the middle of January. You know what we heard back? I'll give you 2 units. This is what being a good neighbor and working sounds like. I wrote to Mr. McKenzie, I said, you got to be kidding me. This is a joke. I said, we are way beyond discouraged. Later, he said, okay, I can do another 15. I figured, I can't wait to find out how he jammed 22 more units in an RM7 on Simpson. That was tight to begin with. So I laid the 2 documents together, side by side, the one January 4 and the recent one. And it was pretty evident. It was pretty simple. Got rid of the pool. I guess they can take cold showers. And he made all the units smaller. Instead of 22 feet wide, they're now 19 and 8 inches. Instead of 65 feet long, they're 44 to 50. Instead of 2 stories high, they're 2 to 3 stories high, with a maximum 45 feet. These are looking like apartments. You're going to turn this place into the projects of the Bronx or Brooklyn. This is the developing interest. Now, we know you need development. We know you need more. And we don't quarrel with that. But put it somewhere else where you don't have the congestion. I think you're exposing the city, knowing that there's a problem, knowing that somebody is not going to get to the hospital in time, knowing somebody might die as a result of it, knowing that a fire might burn out of control. I think you're looking for a lawsuit. And I think when a lawsuit comes, if it's a death, it ain't going to be $10. It's going to be in the millions. I worked for a large automotive company before I retired. One of my last assignments was up in Boston for New England. I was asked to manage the activities for one of the divisions of the company for New England. And they said, if you can handle this group of people up here, you can handle anybody in the country. And they were right. What I found was the folks in New England are good people. They really are. They have a problem. They're very litigious. They love to litigate. They love to sue you. They will say, if this doesn't suit me, I'm taking you to court and I'm taking everybody that touched this. And sure enough, we'd catch about 1 lawsuit a week, most of it spurious, some of it not, and we'd settle them. It would cost us, but it's sure a lot cheaper than $40,000 to $50,000 preparing to take something to court. Even one of the universities, it was Rhode Island University, on how to effectively sue municipalities, corporations, and individuals. And this wasn't just for pre-law students. This was common curriculum. This is a way of life. Now, guess who's moving down here? The people from New England, New York, Massachusetts, Rhode Island. If they get caught in one of these intersections, which is going to get worse now, by the way, but if you did nothing with this, this is going to get worse. If they get caught, you're going to catch a lawsuit. And they'll sue the city, they'll sue the mayor, they'll sue the council members, because you all had a part in approving something that was pretty evident was going to get worse. Now, I know you probably have indemnity insurance. And I know, at least I think you do, and I would imagine that covers the key officials of the mayor and the top officials, and probably the council members. But a lot of times, that liability insurance doesn't cover anything but accidental mistakes and omissions, not known problems that are likely to exist or to be exasperated by what you do. And so my suggestion would be, if I were sitting in that seat up there, I'd sashay on down to the city's legal department tomorrow morning. And I'd say, what do you think of this? Is there anything we can do that could get the city in trouble? Are we covered? Am I covered? Am I covered for more than just exemptions? Am I covered for known acts that are likely to create and magnify known problems? And so here's what we suggest. Don't vote this up. Don't vote it down. Table it. Table it for 12 months. Give us an opportunity, the citizens here who care the very most about our safety and well-being, will work with you and the county and the state to go after the more than $1 trillion funds just to handle infrastructure. Let's get Anderson's fair share. Let's get more than their fair share.
Anything else, Mr.? Go ahead. Yep. Any other points outside of?
The end of the 12 months?
Yep. Go ahead.
12-month period, we will have a much better idea how much we can get in grants, what projects we can cover, what is funded. And so at that time, you'll be in a lot better position to know what projects are we able to do, how is that going to alleviate the problem, will it take care of today's problem, the 1,000 vehicle problems, and anything else that we want to develop, and can we do it safely?
Thank you, sir.
And so I have only one final question.
Yes, sir.
Is if you and your families, the ones you love more than anything in the world, lived out here with us, how would you vote? Would you vote to knowingly make their lives more difficult by throwing 700 more cars problem, or would you vote to finally try and fix this to better the lives of all of the citizens? Thank you for your
Thank you, Mr. Ogden.
and
I think the good thing about this process, and honestly, with Mr. Ogden's comments, were that he's talked to a lot of the people in this audience. What I would ask, and quite honestly, Mr. McKenzie has a lot of respect for you. He told us that too, so thank you. Yes. No, well, you know, we'll go with that. But having said that, this issue's been in the planning committee, very public. Just had a statement right here that was very comprehensive. What I would ask is, and we have a gentleman who's come to the mic, and what I would ask is that if you have something different than what Mr. Ogden has said, okay, and I'll be the judge of the cutoff on that, okay? So your name, address.
My name is Ed Dutton. I'm also from Cobb's Glen, and I'm the guy that sent each of you a summary of the concerns about these two developments. Now, I know what's driving all of this relatively low-income development, and that's all the businesses that have been brought to town and relatively low income. So they have low-income housing, and I get that. And developers are trying to address that situation, and they should, and I'm for it. But I'm also for where it should be. I don't want to see what amounts to tract homes right next to a $500,000 development. Homes of $500,000. I don't think that makes sense. Anyway, I'm going to talk about density a little bit.
Now, Mr. Ogden talked about density. So you promised me it would be something different than what we've heard.
Yes, it is going to be different.
Okay, go right ahead.
The proposal that Maurice talked about a minute ago said 2.9 units per acre. Well, that's 2.9 units for the entire development, of which
2.58.
not buildable land. Now, if you go back and look at what is buildable, and Maurice and I did discuss this, what you wind up with is on an average of about a little more than 4 homes per acre, totally. Now, there are two groups of homes. There's the 7 to 8,500 square foot homes. There's the 8,501 to 10,000 square foot homes.
Now,
Those two groups make
now
up.
keep in mind, yes, sir. Keep in mind, we have, as a council, we have the dimensions of all the square footage. We looked at that,
Okay.
right?
Are you aware that it's almost 5 units on average per acre?
We would disagree with that. My professional team, we'll talk about that, David.
Yes, sir. I would disagree with that. That's not the engineering method or the planning method in which you look at these developments. Before you, again, is a spreadsheet that details the development density units per acre. The correction to the speaker is that this is the single-family homes are actually 2.58 units per acre. Puts in the surrounding area as the third least dense. Again, you have the Arbors at Cobb's Glen at 3.55, the Greens at Cobb's Glen of 2.16, the Heritage at Cobb's Glen of 4.10, the Willow Haven at Cobb's Glen of 5.7, Creighton Hall 6.6, and so forth. So you see there's a lot of density, particularly in those PDDs of Cobb's Glen that are on Old Williamston Road that are already existing. Along with this goes in the surrounding county planning, as you can see regarding the map that I put before you, the zoning map. As you can see, there's R12, R15 around it, and that was well put out for and well designed really for residential development. If that was the county's intent back then, because it certainly occurred that way. So just to clarify.
Go ahead, sir. Yep.
How did you calculate the 2.9 units per acre?
2.5 acres. Engineer calculated for us, and so you look at the.
If you know,
Absolutely.
You the ones making the decision, you need to know that.
And we do, sir, respectfully.
We do. Yes, sir.
Well, tell me how you did it.
I'll answer questions from council.
Go ahead, sir.
All right. I discussed that specific thing with Maurice some time back. And if you take the total acreage, including the swamp, the wetland, the roads, the common area, and relate that to the homes, you get the 2.58. But if you take, that's just the buildable land, and then do another division, you'll find out it's closer to 4 and sometimes 5.
I get that. I mean, as far as, you have a couple more points? We've talked about density. So anything else?
If you take the plat and you start adding up, starting with the lots there on Old Williamson Road, and just add them up till you get to 43,560 square feet, which is which is an acre. You'll have to go to about 4.5 lots to get that. And that's where I started. Then I saw that, hey, that's the case for this entire development. The entire development winds up being 4.55. I'll give you my.
I understand. Yes, sir. I get your point. We'll agree to disagree on that one. Anything else?
Can I pass this to you?
Sure.
Sorry,
anything after that?
Give that to the chairman. Okay, the density issue is, I've made my point with the density issue. The other issue is a traffic concern.
And I get that.
I haven't talked about a specific traffic concern, and this is one that I've talked with.
Mr. Ogden talked about, and we saw pictures on the traffic concerns. Yes, sir.
Traffic through the cut-through from the reserve to the commons.
Yes, sir. We're aware of that. Yes, sir.
You know it's going to be a big traffic jam in the morning when everybody at the back end of the reserve decides to go to Simpson Road, while the people on the commons also decide to go to Simpson Road.
So traffic, we talked about it. What else?
That's it.
Thank you. Anybody have anything that's any different? Because believe it or not, we want to talk as this is our business meeting, and we'd like to talk openly in front of you about our concerns too, and how we would manage this situation. So, yes, sir.
Hey, I'm Walter Welsh. I live at 112 Sea Palms Drive in Cobb's Glen. I'm also a member of the board of the Homeowners Association. I want to do what I did for you guys, what I did for the Planning Commission. And I want to appeal to your common sense and your community mindedness, because that, to me, that is what's being just bulldozed over right here. You see the problems that are occurring, and you've been presented that information. Again, Joe said the fuzzy math. You know, whatever the numbers were Cobb's Glen, that couldn't have been including the golf course, all the acreage that surrounds our homes. There's no way our numbers would be half, if not less than half, of the numbers that you're using. You're using numbers that are, you've got in the original planning that showed that there's 14.75 acres that wasn't even considered for development because it is a wetland. You can't develop it, but you're using that, and now you're going to pull everything out of the wetlands forward. So the numbers that were given in the Planning Commission said there was only a 2-household difference. And using that fuzzy math, that may be true. But we've got the documents from the county that were submitted to the county. We got the information. I'm sure you guys have that as well.
No doubt.
Notification of change on that document. And then the number is specific, is a 154 homes. And that was R20 by the roadside and R15 in the back portion. And the back 14.75 acres wasn't able to be developed. That developer knew that. So now we're including it, and we've gone from R20 and R15 to 6,500 square foot lots. This same thing happened nearly 20 years ago with West Point across the street. They were going to put over 400 homes directly across the street. The community, just like you see here tonight, got together and said, this makes no sense for our community. None whatsoever. Has there been any consideration as to what it's going to do to just take the one business of the golf course? I know a lot of you guys are golfers. I know a lot of you guys play out at Cobb's. But what's that going to do? What's that going to do to the traffic over there? One of the guys on the Planning Commission, and I'm sorry I don't know everybody's name, said, oh, yeah, I went over there one day. I'll never do that again. At a certain time, it's like, I won't go that route anymore. So here's somebody on the Planning Commission that admittedly says, I don't want to go over there. It's already bad. And Joe has pointed out that we are trying to take everything into consideration. Now, I don't think anybody in here, and I'll ask this to everybody, I don't think anybody's in here opposed.
Here's my point. Here's my point again, and you just mentioned it again. Mr. Ogden has made this point.
I'm just drawing tangents.
I know. I understand.
I'm trying to rehash this point. I'm just drawing
tangents. Well, okay. Move on.
So my point is that nobody here is against development, but there's sensible development. And my biggest question has been, we went to extraordinary lengths to start zoning in Anderson County. It didn't exist until 20 years ago. And we hired an attorney, we got involved, we met with it, we laid everything out, we took the map, and we zoned it. And we didn't get everything we wanted, but we got a lot of what we wanted. So my question is, if the community has said this, and it's just at this point, apparently, and I'm not saying it is, I hope this isn't a done deal, but if it's being ignored, then what's the point? So I looked up, I'm like, what is zoning? And you know what zoning is? Zoning is a way for the community to keep its government managed so that unreasonable decisions aren't being made. I'm not saying you're going to make one, but as a community, it doesn't matter whether you live in the city or you live in the county. I'm in and out of the city every day. I'm in the county every day, as most of you are. We live in this community together. Why can't we cooperate, put our heads together, and come up with a plan that is less dense? We don't have the infrastructure set up to take what we have already, and now we're going to add yet another 400 nearly homes, and which is going to equate to at least 800 vehicles. How are we going to handle that? Let's use our common sense and say, maybe we should get the infrastructure.
I get that, and we're infrastructure, and you're making a point, another tangent. Anything else?
You is to think like a member of the community.
We are.
Not just the city. I understand it's tax revenue, and I get it. I mean,
Thank you.
Takes money to run government. It takes money to run a city. and a county.
Thank you, Ms. Walsh.
Your common senses to say, as Joe said, let's table this, let's come together as a community, and let's talk about it. I don't want that developer to not develop in Anderson County, but I think there's a more sensible way to do it, and I think everybody here agrees with that.
Thank you. Point, we're going to turn it into a business meeting. I would like to open it up to our council on anything. We have the applicant here somewhere. You still here? They're back here. We have the applicants here. We have our administrative team here. So I'm going to open it up to questions to our board. I'm going to ask you guys to respectfully listen to this meeting. Go ahead. Anybody?
Mayor, I'll start.
Ms. Roberts?
I understand your concerns, and I'm listening. Now,
We'll talk louder, and hopefully you'll be able to hear us. Were you able to hear the speakers before us? You didn't hear them either? Well, sometimes it's very difficult in a crowded room. Go ahead, Mr. Roberts.
clear?
Go,
Or someone else's?
Jeff, go ahead. Well, he just said he couldn't hear. Okay, so we'll speak up so you can hear. Well, we're going to talk now, okay? Go ahead. Sir, we can't start until we have silence here, okay? So if you would, I get your point, okay? But I just need you to be quiet, okay? Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
I want to address the traffic. I haven't heard any solutions from this group put forth. But I'm going to make some suggestions of what not only the city, the county, had put forth. That's about all I can give you. If you need to come up, come on up, sir. No.
If you, obviously if you've been listening to me, you're going to make a point that nobody else has made, right?
Well, yeah.
Okay, you go right ahead.
My name's Antonio Barracat. I live over on 126 Spanish Wells. I moved down here about 8 years ago from New Jersey.
A city seeker, yes.
Dealing with that traffic. And I want to just say congratulations to Anderson. I read in the paper that we are in the top 5 rated by AARP and Forbes magazine as being the top 5 retirement communities in the country. And that's definitely something. So I just want to say thank you for the council and for Mr. Mayor for helping bringing Anderson to that level. And I'm not here to express any grievances or provide any solutions, but growing up in a very dense environment, we had to make very educated decisions on how we were going to build. Building with density is not a problem. We want people to come to Anderson, but building responsibly is what's important. And the only way to do that is, my suggestion is to maybe look at developing a working community, a working group with individuals from the community and yourselves, some engineers. I see a lot of metrics being thrown around, but nothing is sticking because it can be misconstrued. But I think maybe if you guys establish a working community, you guys appoint some members of the community to it and work through the engineering and work through that and have a few sessions on that, so that at the end of it, even though it may not be the outcome that everybody wants, it's at least giving a good chance at looking at the data, understanding it, and talking together about it. And, you know, when I came here, the East-West Parkway, I was every day going down East-West and making a right onto Clemson to drop my kids off at school. But then I noticed the Beltline. There's a street called the Beltline that cuts right half of Clemson Boulevard and takes me right in front of my kid's school. Something like that through the community, it may be a solution, might not be. Having something from Old Williamston that goes into Simpson or something like that, all these solutions, we won't be able to have a chance to think about those if we don't sit down and talk to each other. Everybody here is very emotional, and we have to remove that. We have to sit down diplomatically and talk to each other with the data in front of us in a couple sessions to iron these things out. I'm only asking to give that a chance.
I agree.
And move forward with that.
Thank you, sir. Jeff, you want to? Go ahead, Ms. Roberts.
Let me try to start over. I want to talk about traffic solutions. And I mentioned to you there are 4 players in the traffic solution: the developer, the city, the county, and the state. Is that better? I think I can even hear it better. Yeah. Let me tell you what the developer did. And per our request, he agreed to put left and right turn lanes into each entrance so that you can move those cars out of the travel lanes before they try to turn in. So you've got, if you're trying to make a right-hand turn in, you've got a deceleration lane to move off the road and then turn in. If you're coming the opposite direction and you want to make a left turn in, he's put in a center turning lane between the 2 travel lanes to get out of the travel and then turn in. He has also put in left and right egress coming out of the subdivision at both entrances. So you've got, the developer's done his part. He can't do any more than that. The city has committed.
Hey, wait a second. Let's be respectful. Nobody's laughed up here yet. Okay? Go ahead, Jeff.
Let me tell you what the city is committed to do. Along Simpson Road, starting at Highway 81, coming all the way to Calhoun Street to improve the drainage and sidewalks. Intersection, we're going to study that intersection at Midway or Calhoun and Simpson. There may be an opportunity there to get a traffic signal. The county is going to pick up improvements from Calhoun Street to Old Williamston Road. They're going to do improvements along that stretch where that S-curve is. That bridge is coming out. They're going to widen it and help straighten out that S-curve. That entire stretch along Simpson Road is going to be improved. I mentioned ANATs. The city has a seat at that table, and I think there are 3 of us. I think there may be 1 vacancy, but it'll be filled. Mm-hmm. We have a seat at that table, so we get to make these recommendations. And to the state, and this is per my request, through ANATs, we're going to request that the state look at a 3-lane road along Old Williamston Road. 2 travel lanes and 1 in the center. Keep the traffic moving on either side, and those who need to turn, get into the turn lane. We're also going to ask DOT to look at a signal at that 3-way stop at Simpson Road and Old Williamston Road. Maybe they'll do a traffic study and they'll make that determination, but if it helps move that traffic through quicker, then by all means, we will advocate for that. But those are your 4 solutions to your traffic problem. And really, they go much further than that. We as council, some of us sit on ANAT, some of us sit on the COG. And if you don't know what the COG is, it's the Council of Governments. They also have a transportation planning component within the COG. And it goes even beyond this development to widen corridors such as Highway 29, maybe even extending the east-west connector, those sorts of things that will help alleviate that traffic. So we're thinking long-term. We're not focused in on just these couple of roads here. So I will tell you that traffic solutions are coming. They don't happen quickly. It takes funding. And I suspect the build-out on this project is anywhere from 6 to 10 years. That's just my guess. So some of these solutions can be in place by the time the build-out occurs. I, for one, moving on to another point I want to make, density does not necessarily bother me. I'm sensitive to it, but if it's done correctly, it can be very nice. So I'm not afraid of density. You do get a lot of benefits if this were done in the city as opposed to the county, and a lot of those have already been mentioned. I won't go back through them. You'll get a better product. So those are my comments for the moment.
Thank you. Anybody else on council? Mr. Harbin?
Can we ask a question to him?
Nope, we're talking now. And I'm listening. We're all listening to each other talk right now, okay? And you're privileged to, you're here listening to Mr. Harbin and then Mr. Newton.
Mr. McEwen, could you go back and clarify just a little bit, to where we're at today, like 08, whenever the property, the whole piece of property, I guess the development that actually went in, West Point Commons, which is, I guess that would be on the northern side, and then, I guess the 400 houses were approved at some point in time for that whole piece of property, and then 08 happened where it was a challenge to, building houses, and I think that original, I guess there's about 200 in West Point, that section of it, but how it was zoned in the county?
Yeah, so if talking about just north of there and not the PDD itself, the map in front of you will help out as well, the county zoning plan map. But it's zoned R20 through there, so they just did traditional R20, which basically you just go clear out, do R20 lots and put the houses on there. There's slab on grade, and there's minimum features in there that we require. We require a lot of additional features. Regarding the PDD itself, if you also have a question with that, we have a copy of that PDD. We also talked to the county. It's on file, and I'll let Mr. McKenzie speak to that.
As far as the existing PDD in the county is concerned, Mr. Harbin, that's your question. In 2008, it appeared in the document that a portion of the land was split off to construct Glenview Middle School. And you're right, there was a higher number of units for a proposed development prior to that. But again, I don't have it in front of me, the amount of acreage that Glenview Middle School occupied on the property. But that was removed from the PDD document, or it was removed from the balance of the property that would be developed. And based on our calculations and looking at the numbers, again, up to 154 houses were remaining to be built. But it looks like there could have been a little bit more property taken off of that phase 1 and phase 2, I guess, if you will, where it went to Glenview Middle School. So that's why we're saying that it could be around 124 to 154 as far as the number of houses that are allowed currently in the county. And again, the PDD document was forwarded to me in November from the county planning director, so that's the information we have in front of us.
Okay, and could you, when we did a calculation of development density units per acre of 2.58, and I assume the spreadsheet that I'm looking at, has the arbors, the greens, the heritage, which the heritage sort of considered multifamily, so more of the greens and the arbors. And if I'm not mistaken, if you're coming down Old Williamston, the greens is the first development on the right that has a common area in the middle, and the houses are built around and sort of in a horseshoe. And then and that density is 3.55, I'm sorry, 2.16. And when we're calculating that, that's also calculating the common area in the inside the horseshoe where there are no houses, right?
Yes, when we calculate, we base it on the total number of units divided by the number of acres. And the piece of property developed directly across the street from this site, I guess almost the intersection would be across from each other. That's the Arbors, I believe. And I'm not certain what's in front of you in terms of density, but I do know, I think it consists of about 29 or so lots. Some of the lots are under 5,000. They range from 8,000 square feet.
The document I have has the Arbors at 3.55. And I don't know, I don't think they have any green area that I know of, any common.
For the most part, I believe it's right. About 29 houses, then with your infrastructure, with the road, and it kind of curves around kind of in a semi-horseshoe.
I'm just trying to get my idea. You know, I think I have it in exactly. It's going to be a cross between the Arbors and the Greens. It's going to be less dense than the Arbors. 2.5 to 2.16 from the Greens, so a little closer with the same setback regulations, 20 and 7, that's identical to the Greens at Cobb's Glen that's currently developed. Is that a safe assumption, Mr. McCune?
Councilman Harvin, you know, when I was looking at this, where you take it, whether it's in the city or in the county, either one, the closest one it's going to be closest to is the Rockwell Plantation Phase 1, which is 2.57 acres. I mean, 2.57 per acre. And we're at 2.58.
Yeah, I was looking at, I mean, I think it'd be important to me, and I think it's important to my friends. You know, the front setbacks, side setbacks, it's identical. The PDD document's identical to the Greens. It's the exact same setback. It's the exact same side setbacks. And, you know, maybe a little, in a density standpoint, you're right. It's the same density as Rockwell. I was a little bit disappointed with Mr. Joe and Mr. Walter whenever, because I was at that homeowners association meeting. You spoke so highly of Maurice, but you must not have liked me at the homeowners association, that meeting this fall, how great of a job that Maurice did. I must not have done quite a good job whenever y'all were yelling at me. Well, thank you. When y'all were fussing at me in the clubhouse, you know, and if you remember what I said that night, and I appreciate y'all having me actually, but what I said that night is the traffic I think is a concern. Now, as a city, you know, I think as a state we're 20 years behind to begin with, and you know it's not something that a broad brush is gonna, you know, fix. The product developed in the city, I'm confident, and you might disagree, I'm confident it'll be a better product developed in the city than it will be in the county. And I said that night because our restrictions are different. You just heard, y'all were here earlier enough, you heard about the tree ordinance. I mean, I remember at Cobb's Glen, I remember when West Point was made, and it was a significant mass flattening. Now, there weren't a lot of trees on there to begin with. It was a pine forest, you know, that a lot of the pines have been cut off of it, but it was flattened. And I think some of my friends were living there at the time. It was flattened. They put a road in, and they bammed houses. And, you know, we have Mr. Roberts, you know, as a builder, and they have all kind of rules. I mean, they have to have breaks every so many feet. They have to have where the intersection doesn't go into a house. It doesn't, you know, if a T intersection won't hit. Mr. Chapman, who used to be on council, did a great job, and because that's one of their professions, is designing these things. And I think you'll get a much better product in the city than you will in the county. Now, the traffic part of it, you know, it's too complex. The city can't solve that problem. Mr. Roberts said Mr. Jeff Roberts said a great, you know, the developer has done everything that you know, we can't make him make Old Williamston Road 3 lanes coming from the fairgrounds, which, you know, Cobb's Glen, when it was built in 1974, was in the country. And I started going out there in 1974, and it was in the country, and it is no longer in the country. And you know, when you went to the jockey lot, you packed a lunch because it was a long ways out there, and now it is there. And you know, I said that night, I think South Carolina's 20 years behind in infrastructure of roads and where they were going to develop. And as a city, we can't solve that problem. It's not our job to solve every traffic issue, you know, within the city. We can work with our partners and try to solve them, and that's what we've tried to do here. And I'm sort of rambling, Mayor, and I don't want you to get mad at me, so I'm going to stop.
About cut you off. Ms. Newton.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Harbin covered a lot of things I was going to bring up. Maurice, you might have sat down too soon. I do have more questions for you. Mr. McEwen as well. The thing when this whole process started for me, a lot of it hinges on that initial 2008 Planning Commission meeting by the county. Can you kind of just explain to me and council and just kind of rehash for everybody what was decided then? Because I think there's a little bit of a misconception of this going back before them. That they would not be owning it. They wouldn't be doing anything like that. So can you kind of just explain the difference between the meeting in 2008 and what would ever happen again in the future for the county?
Concerned with the county? Again, it is our understanding that, again, looking at the document and taking out the balance of the property that was used for Glenview Middle School, it appears that it says 154 units could be built in there. But again, a portion of that property was removed. So that's where we come up, generally speaking, with 124 to 154. I would think, and again, I can't speak for the county, that they could submit a plan to the county. It could be approved based on their interpretation of that. But again, I can't speak to how they would interpret that. But again, it lists it specifically as 154 units in a couple of those remaining phases. But looking at it and looking at what was taken out for Glenview Middle School, it did take away a little bit of those first two phases. That's why it's a little bit uncertain on my part. It may be uncertain on the county's part, but not certain.
Ewan, would it be your understanding that, say this failed tonight here, that tomorrow the developer could turn around and go to the county and begin the process of going ahead and building, pulling permits, all that nature?
Yes, I mean, I don't see a scenario lawfully that could prevent development of this area by the county. I don't see any way that you can take the property rights away, what's zoned, what's on file, and not allow the property owner to sell the property to the developer and developer to take action and start building.
And that's kind of been my thing this whole process. And I mean, Mr. Roberts and I, the closest Mr. Roberts, we have three, and we've talked a lot. Maurice, you've been great. Andrew, David, I mean, we went back and forth on this a lot, just really whittling away at the number, getting to something that's a little more palatable for everybody. This one, to me, is more difficult than, I dare say, many of the developments we've seen the last several years, in that option A to us is you develop in the city. Option B is they develop in the county, and there's really no option C for this one. I mean, unlike other annexations to where, you know, you vote up or you vote down, you know, you have a development or you don't. Either way, a development is coming to that parcel. I mean, that is our understanding in all the conversations that we've had. Our conversations, again, from my perspective and other council members, is we're trying to get the best product for the area. And the ability to, again, and I'll put you on the spot, Mr. McEwen, if it doesn't pass tonight and they turn around tomorrow and work through the county, could they build slab on grade? Yes. Is there anything, I reserve my comments on the tree ordinance, which is extremely important to me in the area that I represent, but again, is there anything that would prevent them from mass grading that site?
Nothing to prevent them.
And I mean, that's really where a lot of things hinge for me personally, is getting the quality product that we need in the community. I don't even want to say the city, but the community. And it has not been an easy process, but to me, the die was really cast in 2008 with that initial County Planning Commission meeting. But again, thank you, Maurice. Thank you, David, for those.
Mr. Stewart.
Councilman Newton, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm kind of at the same spot that you are. You know, you have a Plan A and you have a Plan B. And do I think Plan A coming into the city is going to give the best product at the end of the day? By all means, from how the development looks, from making sure the houses look a lot better than I think they would look in the county, to solving traffic problems. I think that we've got a great team that can assemble the key people together to help solve the traffic problems. Now, is it going to be solved overnight? No. Is every house going to be built overnight? No. It's going to be spread out over years. So if this development gets approved tonight, it's not like we're going to see 600 houses out there, whatever the number is, in a year from now, 12 months from now, 24 months. It's going to be over a period of time. And again, I agree wholeheartedly with what you said and what I've heard my fellow council members say. And Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a motion that we approve it on first reading.
We have a first by Mr. Stewart,
Second.
second by Mr. Lockridge. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? That passes unanimously on the first reading.
Mayor, could you, before it comes back up for second reading, we could also discuss the PDD part of the document?
Yes, I think that's doable. Did you get that, Mr. McEwen?
The county PD part or the city?
The PDB, the city?
City PD. Yeah. Aspects of it.
About the, on page,
I don't think,
clarification on page 2, number 3. Construction and maintenance of the vinyl siding.
Can we wait a second? I can't hear until the crowd's over. I can't hear what you're saying.
Yeah, residential construction.
We don't mind you talking, but maybe in the lobby area if you're going to stay, okay? Go ahead, Mr. Harvin.
On page 2 of the PDD document, you know, like I said, I'm fairly familiar with the Cobb's Glen area, and the last house that was built in there was a 2,000 square foot house, and this is not in any of the PDD documents. It's in the general subdivision of Cobb's Glen. It was a 2,000 square foot vinyl sided house with a 10-foot setback. It had variance, but it was a 10-foot setback from the property line. And on number 3, it says, exterior building materials will consist of vinyl, shake siding, board, batten siding, brick, and or stone, and combination of these products. Does that mean it cannot be all vinyl, or does that mean it can be all vinyl?
No, so it's providing the general description of what the house could be built out of. And so, yeah, it could consist of all vinyl.
Okay. And I think that's, you know, the actual Cobb's Glen subdivision that I guess got the homeowners association, or whoever the last house that was built in there is 2,000 square feet, all vinyl sided.
All one? Yeah. So what you see here, though, I mean, these houses, and the applicant, I know, if they're still here, somebody mentioned they're going to be affordable houses. Well, you know, they're looking to market these things $300,000, $500,000. Mungo Home is the builder. They use a combination of materials on this type of product. And I know they can speak to that, but
yeah, I just, you know, didn't know if we could put in this PDD document that cannot be straight vinyl. I mean, hardy board, you know, is good, but you know, maybe right over number 1 of Cobb's Glen and look at that house and don't build that.
I agree. Yeah,
He's coming down.
Yeah, he's coming.
That's a good question for Chris Eberhard.
Go ahead.
Difficult hearing back there as well. Steve McNair. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'll be happy to answer any questions relative to the product.
Would you address that again, Matt?
Thanks. On page 3 of the PDD document, and I'll just read it too. I'll just read it to you. Can you hear me? It says, now let me find it. It says residential homes should, the exterior building materials will consist of vinyl, shake siding, board, and batten siding, brick and or stone, or a combination of these products and above. My observation is, you know, I'm out that way. I'm in that traffic, what they talked about every day. But when I get to number 1 at Cobb's Glen, the last house built in Cobb's Glen is a 2,000 square foot, all vinyl sided house. Nothing, I've met the people that live there. They're nice people. They didn't build the house. That's not sort of what we, you know, I didn't know if we could put in the PDD document to not do a strictly cookie cutter vinyl house. I think during our work sessions, we've seen pictures that you provided for us of renderings. They didn't look anything like that house on number 1 inside Cobb's Glen. And I just wanted to make sure that that was covered in the PDD document going forward.
The answer to that question is these are not going to be vinyl side houses. That's not what we intended to put in there. I think there will be some vinyl in the soffits. There'll be some vinyl in the gables. But as far as largely, it'd be probably fiberboard, something like that would be on the siding of the house. Similar products that Mungo Homes built in some other areas in Greenville, and I brought up Indigo Point as another subdivision that we're doing with Mungo, and they're made a very good quality statement in that neighborhood, and we're really excited about having them and the products that they build. They've got very good elevations that we're very happy with in all of our other neighborhoods. So this would be the 4th neighborhood that we're doing Mungo Homes. So if you go out to Smith Mill Landing, you'll see the townhomes that they've done out there. Those are quality townhomes, and that's not an all vinyl community there. Indigo Point is not an all vinyl community there either. So I think their statement to quality is up there on par with any builder out there. And I don't like plastic homes. You know, that's what I call them. I don't like some of these neighborhoods, and they're not landscaped well. And that makes it even worse, I think, at the end of the day, when it's all vinyl siding and then it's just maybe 2 or 3 trees in the yard. So I guess I'll go on record. I'll probably get ridiculed a little bit, that being a developer and advocating for more trees in our yards. But at the same time, you know, it does look well. It makes for an early maturing neighborhood. And we're excited about being a part of it and appreciate you all's cooperation. I think it's incumbent upon us to watch it very carefully on what is built in there, and that when we write this final code and you all sign off on it, that it is the Bible, so to speak. And you know, I certainly feel like we're there to help carry that ball forward.
And you know, Mr. Mayor, I'm probably rambling.
Go right ahead.
You know, I think the concern of the citizens that were here, they're all good people, and they just didn't want the exact same thing as West Point, and on number 1 Green, that somehow they allowed in their own subdivision, but they didn't want those houses to be right there. And I think that's what they're scared of. And, you know, yes, we're scared of the traffic too. To me, that's the big issue. But, you know, making sure that we have a quality product. I certainly have looked at, you know, some of your developments and feel confident. And that's all I have, Mayor.
And, Mr. what we can do on that PDD, if Mr. Monair is in agreement, it's a little negotiation right here on the floor, but to put must consist of a combination of those products and keep the listing. I mean, keep the listing of the products, but it's a combination of those products. Therefore, in concurrence with what you just said, it cannot be built all vinyl. And so that takes care of that.
I mean, I think, yeah.
With that?
Yeah, that's not the intent to have an all vinyl community. I'm okay with that, yes.
Thank you, Matt. While we got the developer here, Mr. Stewart and Mr. Roberts.
I'd just like to reiterate, I think it was mentioned by you know, the good residents of Cobb's Glen, they was concerned about low-income, affordable housing and that development. Well, you know, when you talk about affordable housing, you know, come over to the Alphabet Streets or to the west side or the east side, that's affordable housing. Housing that's going to go in here, these are going to be nice homes, I can promise you, that are probably $250,000 to $500,000 in range. That is not typical affordable housing, you know, and so I want the residents to feel assured that there's not a product that's going to go there that's going to detriment the value of your homes that you have in Cobb's Glen.
Buying a Mungo home in Greenville, Indigo Point, started out in the mid-4s. It's a 2,800 square foot house, nice home. It's a story and a half house, and with the rise in building materials and costs, the house is over $600,000 now. Which I'm aghast for saying that, but at the same time, it's a nice home. It's in a nice neighborhood. It's got a junior Olympic size pool like we'll have here. We did get rid of the smaller pool that's over in the townhome section in favor of a larger junior Olympic size pool and a larger clubhouse in the main section of the subdivision. Added all the other amenities, pocket parks, added the trail systems. And so I think that it's going to be a quality. So the lifestyle is going to be good. And guess what? These same people are going to go across the street, probably play golf and sign up to join golf memberships over there. So I think at the end of the day, this situation is going to marry up well. And yes, I agree with Jeff Roberts that, we all got work to do. I think we've done probably as much as we can do, but certainly I'm available to talk to DOT or whomever else that may want to, a part of any, let's just call it government, public comments, workshops, whatever you may call them. We love Anderson. Think it's a great city. I think you all are doing a wonderful job, and I salute you all for your prayer and for the Pledge of Allegiance to head off at your meetings, because not all municipalities are doing that now, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think that speaks to your level of reasonableness and common sense, and I thank you for that.
Maybe one more question, Mr. Roberts, and I think that we need to get out of the mindset of affordable housing. It's attainable housing. It's what people can afford. Attainable housing.
Good word.
And sometimes attainable housing is the ABC streets, and sometimes it's $350,000, $400,000. Ms. Roberts.
I wasn't able to get this point in before things just kind of got out of hand, but on the building eaves extending into the setback area, it's allowed up to 18 inches. I'm strongly opposed to that. Is there any way that we can not let those eaves extend into the setback area? And typically we do not allow that.
Chris, come on now.
I'm sorry, was that for me? No.
You and Maurice, perhaps, and Chris, whoever.
I'm doing the engineering. Spoke to you before. Yeah, we put that in there because there's certain house plans that's already been chosen. County in most places allow the eaves to go into it, and one of the reasons is if you're a surveyor, if you say the eaves can't go in, and I go stake the house, or do an as-built of a house for a bank, for a loan, approaching in the setbacks. We don't do that. That's one of the reasons the face of the house, not the eaves. But they can only extend so far. I've seen some go up to 36 inches in different parts of the state. Or different. We just put the minimum, so that, because if we were to go stake the house, or if somebody does an as-built, later, a different surveyor or anybody, if you can't go in, then that's a violation. Surveyors can't be certifying maps for that. The bank needs to know that there's an encroachment within the
Lot sizes, I'm sure we've got various building sizes. Up to that minimum of 7 feet on the side yards, you intend to build right up to it.
they pick these lots. All their choices of houses. We chose 3 different varieties: 54, 60, and 70 based on
I know for a fact the last summer we did not allow those eaves to extend into the city.
That's the problem. We were getting calls about it. We're surveyors need to be aware of that, because if I go survey a house, I shoot the foundation, you know, around the house, we're gonna have to start showing up. Because when they told me that, I said that satisfy y'all, but then how's that gonna come back on us when actually it's applying lot now? We have to certify whether it's a compliant. So I've never seen that anywhere else. And if that's the case, we're gonna have to have a meeting with all the surveyors in upstate to make sure they understand that you can't be certifying, even though the foundation may be within your setbacks.
What else is excluded from protruding into setbacks? Steps, for example? Porches?
Steps, you can't go too terribly far.
Steps and porches?
Well, not, porches can to some degree, but not a covered porch. Just the concrete part can sometimes, you know, depends on the municipality.
You're speaking of the proper building walls will be up to that 7-foot side yard setback.
Outside of the wall, so the foundation, I mean, typically pull it back an inch or two, you gotta do stuff, but like, that's, I never heard it until we talked recently about it, and that's why we put this.
We've been doing it.
I know, but I'm surprised somebody hadn't already gotten caught from a surveyor standpoint or staking, because, well, like if you send me a house plan to stake, I'm gonna stake the corners of the house, right? But if it's a tight lot, stake it, and then you're across it. The bank says, hey, we got you're in the setback, and therefore it's not complying. You can cause trouble with a loan.
But my point would be then you need to set the house back 8.5 feet.
Well, we don't know the roof plan either, so I'll serve as to stake stuff for all these any contractor. And it don't matter if it's a big lot and you're way away.
Can we look at this? We keep arguing the point.
Yeah.
Get your typical floor plan and see how those fit on the bigger lots probably won't matter because you've got more room to.
It's just those smaller lots.
Smaller lots. Would you get your building plan and see how that fits on those lots and then what the true setback might be?
We'll have that in between here in the second reading.
We'd like to address that though, because I've talked to a few surveyors and they're like, because we certify stuff to the bank for loans. And now I didn't know that. I'd never heard that. And I just didn't know.
You know, roof eaves measure 16 inches or whatever. That could just be a footnote, could it not? You still shoot the corners, but the overhangs are 16 inches.
Yeah, we can put a note on it. It's just nobody in our profession was aware that that was happening. When we go out, we're shooting the corners. That's traditional. Outside taking the measurements. Sometimes you see roofs that are really fancy go way over.
So let's continue this discussion. Good point, Jeff. Yep. Thank you, Mr. McNair. Thank you, Mr. Everhart.
Thank you.
We've got 5 items of new business, and the first item is request consideration to purchase playground equipment for D.B. Walker Park. Ms. McEwen.
We're pleased to bring this project to you. This is a phase 2 of D.B. Walker Park. It's a CDBG funded project, and Bobby Bevel will present the item to you, our Parks and Rec Director. Mr. Bevel.
Most of you saw this. This is an expansion of D.B. Walker Playground. That area is in a this area neighborhood which qualifies it for CDBG, and in 2020 we put in a new picnic shelter, provision shelter, irrigation, landscaping, and use CDBG money for that project. The scope of this is for the playground expansion, and the scope and work includes demo of the current playground, grading, drainage, concrete borders, and a new playground equipment with pour-and-play surfacing. Land Plan Group was one who designed this, and Carolina Parks and Play was the firm that designed the park theme. As you know, one of the things we've been trying to do is have a different theme at different parks that is just not swing set and a playground. If you remember at B. Thompson, it was a
pour and play surface with musical instruments, sensory play items, and a zip line. This playground will be towers, slides, and climbing activities. And this playground was put in Junction City. And design has been great. And so tonight we come to you asking for approval of funding for playground equipment, installation, drainage, pour and play surface. You see the funding down there, CDBG. $16,700 will be for land plan that with the site prep mobilization, and then the 521 is for the playground, pour and play surface, installation, drainage, 10% retainage, and then contingency, and then the total is 610,743.38. So we recommend approving that money from CDBG funds to advance our recreation master plan.
Thank you, Mr. Bevel. Is the color scheme accurate? The color scheme, is that?
Blue and green.
Blue and green? Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Stewart?
Mr. Bevel, what, do we have any idea what possible problems we could run into for that contingency, or pretty much, when we looked at it, it's pretty much removing the old playground. You got ground area there, you just grading back, so it's, I don't foresee too much problem. Do we have anything that really stands out?
Not that we looked at as far as it's pretty flat. It's just moving some area around. We may have to relocate a few, some water lines or something that's underneath there, because we used to have a fountain there with the old shelter that we had. So we don't expect anything that's with that contingency part of it, I think.
I'd just like to add that, I've had so many residents just compliment the job and the playground at B. Thompson Park, how they take their kids over there and want to know when are they going to get one on the east side of town. And I know they're very excited about it, because I think the object is that someone can go over to B. Thompson Park and get on zip lines and then jump in the car in 5 minutes. You and DB Walker climbing towers and sliding down slides. It's just a good mix in our neighborhood parks. The only concern that I would have, and I spoke with the city manager about it, and hopefully we can come up with some solution, is we have a serious parking problem at DB Walker Park. Unlike, there's nowhere for residents to park. We have a area that we've, if you're familiar, you're coming over the hill blind spot down Jefferson Avenue. As soon as you turn in the area where it says DB Walker Park, there's a huge grass area, and I think from previous plans, it calls for about 25 parking spots. And correct me if I'm wrong, you and your staff has worked with DOT, and they've has said that they would give us an encroachment permit so that we can turn out if we decided to put one.
Correct. Land plan has been in contact. They've looked at the plans, and they're okay with that, and would provide an encroachment permit.
Because right now, everybody parks along Quarry Street, and the residents there kind of get upset when there's a birthday party because they can't back out of their driveway because the Quarry is still real narrow. 2 cars going up and down, you almost have to wait for one to get by before you go around the other one. So I would just, ask that if we could, look at what we have to see about trying to provide some parking down there. And then, and I know it's a far stretch, but Dr. Thompson, I've heard a lot. They said they love the parks, but when you're having parties and you got kids playing and somebody has to go to a bathroom at B. Thompson Park, they have nowhere to go to the bathroom at. So I don't know if somewhere in the future, as we look at doing our neighborhood parks, where it's over in Councilman Lockridge's area, the park over there off of Lindley, or any of the areas, somehow, it's great, but there's got to be some way that we can think about some type of restrooms in our neighborhood parks, because you can enjoy it all day, but sometimes kids got to go. And, you know, it'd be nice to have a place where kids can go short of the city having to put porta-johns down there, which everybody could use, and they can become very unsightly and not very sanitary. So, but I really appreciate you guys looking at it, and you know, just thankful that we have CDBG funds, and I'd like to make a motion that we approve this project.
First by Mr. Stewart, second by Dr. Thompson. Any further discussion? Mr. Roberts?
About moving the basketball courts from D.B. Walker up to Ed Rice area. Was that part of this?
That's not part of this, and we have a couple other phases that are on here too. One of which, phase 3 on the sheet here from land plan, addresses the parking lot issue. But so as part of the master plan of that area, we're working our way down through the park, and then eventually up to Jim Ed Rice. So all linear connect, of course. And we actually have some additional discussion that we'd like to bring to you about a piece of property in the near future as well in this area to help. But Mr. Stewart, also where I think you may have been going with the contingency is hopefully
extra money
used, and then we can take a look at as we talk, because that will be essential, because it will certainly be a very popular park, just as B. Thompson Park is a lot of fun. So
yeah, I'm just very glad that DOT was willing to work with us to give us an encroachment permit coming out of there, because that is a pretty dangerous area, either coming off a railroad down here or coming down Jefferson. You're just blind spots both ways coming down. So.
And also, I just got to take a moment to thank Tamara Lindley on our finance team. She worked hard on this from the retreat where we were and trying to realize. I did promise at the retreat that we would look into avenues of different funding and be able to pursue this. And I'm happy we're pursuing this. But Tamara Lindley in our finance department really identified the funds and how we could adjust them and use this. So she put this together for us from a funding perspective.
Good point. Mr. Jeff Roberts and then Mr. Lockridge.
I don't see in here anywhere design cost from Land Plan Group.
They've already designed it, and we've had the plans done.
So a couple of years ago, Mr. Roberts, we had to show HUD. We actually had to go to DC, the mayor and I and Erica at the time, and show them a plan of how we're going to use our funds in detail. They were taking a look at us, and we did that. So that was part of our plan, was to initiate design on B. Thompson Park, this DB Walker Park, and so forth. So that was a while ago, so we've had it on the shelf, and then this is actually, we just had to identify funding for us. So this is now moving to the ordering the material. It also helps us with our CDBG funding. We have a timeliness test, which means we got to draw down so much money by a certain period of time, which is May the 2nd. So this will make us meet the timeliness test. If we didn't draw this money down, that's the other thing, we wouldn't meet the timeliness test, which we'd be penalized for.
Yep.
Reduction in the future.
Next question real quickly. How accurate are these estimates? These have been priced out in their current?
Just recently, and Bobby can fill you in on that, but we just got these.
They've already been bid out. Is that what?
No. I mean, they have estimated at the current rates and those kind of things, so we don't.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Lockridge.
It probably has something to do with this. That was my dealing with when will it be bid out? When will be completion date?
It's about a 8 to 10 week lead time on playground equipment, so we need to get that PO signed and in the work so they can start manufacturing that equipment. So we're at least 8 weeks out.
Okay, 8 weeks out.
Before we even get the equipment.
I'm gonna say, but what's the completion date for the whole park?
I would think probably August.
So kids will have some time to play with it.
Mr. Harvin.
Mr. Bevel, I just wanted to take a quick second to thank you for everything you do for the city with our parks. And y'all might know this, but we have 14 parks in the city, 13 of them in a dog park, is best I can tell by the website. And to my knowledge, all 13 have had some kind of improvement over the last 10 years. If not even, been redone twice in that 10-year period. And so I'd just like to thank you for your leadership in keeping our parks and recreation at the forefront. That's it, Mayor.
Good.
Thanks to Bobby also.
One of the things is, it's new products, it's new surfacing. One of my goals would be that every playground that we have an in-play surface.
Yep.
That eliminates a lot of maintenance for our guys, but also give kids and parents and grandparents a way to move around without worrying about sand or mulch or whatever. So it's inclusive.
Thank you.
Bobby, Mr. Bevel has promised me he's going to stick around until we accomplish all that as well.
Yeah. I'm
hoping so.
We'll end it on that. We had a first and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you. Order and get going and make our timeliness on drawing down CDBG money. Our second item of new business request consideration to install conduit and fiber for the rec center. Ms. McEwen.
Mr. Bevel also introduced this. If you didn't know, he's also known as the camera guy, the surveillance guy. So anyways, Mr. Bevel.
My expert sitting in the back, if you've got technical questions, Mark Cunningham, and he can answer those. But one of the things that our current system that we've had on the outside has been a radio wireless system, and we've had an opportunity to put fiber in to connect those cameras along with the new cameras that will be on phase 3, which provides a more faster response, but also more reliable, because we've had a lot of drops over the past system that we've used. So putting fiber in is just really a necessity for us as far as security and being able to look at the fields and have images of surveillance camera. We need to get this in before they put the turf in. So they're not born underneath the turf and those kind of things, because we do have cameras along the trail on some of the light poles. So now would be the time we need to try to get this in and get all the infrastructure and conduit in so we can pull the fiber for security cameras and our connections. We'll bring that back to the concession restroom building there, which also will allow us to have access control. That's using our badges or key fobs to open restrooms or get into rooms instead of having a key that when somebody leaves, you got to have new locks put on and a bunch of keys made for the rest of them. So Byers Engineering was chosen to design and install this network. They have done the work on phase 1 of our fiber project and connects downtown and the parking garages as well as Carolina Wren Park. They've also designed the remainder of the larger fiber project for the city. So we're asking for approval tonight of $194,623.50, which would come from the special obligations bond to pay for. This will also connect the employees and the cameras that we have in what we call the athletic maintenance facility, which is the old Anderson County School Board building. Right now, they're on AT&T circuit, and so that would eliminate that cost and provide faster internet and access to the cameras that we have both on the outside and inside.
Great. Thank you. Questions, comments? Mr. Harbin?
So, Mr. Bevel, in your expertise of cameras, so basically the recreation campus would be hardwired.
That is correct.
Hardwired?
Okay.
And do you feel like that's the way that our camera system, because at one point in time we did some non-hardwired cameras, but it seems like that's moving back to being a hardwired system throughout the city?
Correct. And with the wireless system, we had so many issues. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but it's sort of like you get a heavy rainstorm, you lose your signal. So you would have this hardwired, it would not be more reliable. And the other thing is now with all the waves of internet and 5G and all that, it's just, this is the best way for us to know that we're going to get good video and reliable video.
When they pull all these wires, don't they also pull extra wire in there for additional things down the road and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we do. And so couple of things about your question. I know a little bit about cameras as well. So, anyways, the cameras used to be on coax cable, right? Like Charter, you had the coax cable came in, and then that became dated, and you had analog cameras. We updated to digital cameras, and then you went to essentially a mesh network, which we still have across the city in different places to save money on these drops. But you max out the mesh network, and it can't carry but so many cameras. So then we converted to we're on the special network called FirstNet for first responders, and all our phones and everything are on it, which gives you priority wireless internet connectivity. But what happens when we start putting cameras and start concentrating them in one area, we just take all the bandwidth and they start lagging, and we have missed things because of that. And so the fiber is, and we have increased the resolution of the cameras across the city. So the fiber is the only thing that will support it at this point in the technology piece, unless 5G just comes along. But even with that, we would bog it down so much with these cameras. So we're doing that across the city, this transformation of that. Then back to your question about the fiber, yes, we do, you know, you order essentially a bundle of it, right? And we'll use 2 strands of it, and there's another, 100 strands in there. So there's the other opportunities there. Byers Engineering is also the engineering firm. We didn't know this just until recently that it's WCTEL out of Abbeville. They're headquartered in Abbeville, but they're working with Blue Ridge Electric, which is Upcountry Fiber, they're calling it. And they're also doing the engineering for them. So we're in a lot of talks about coordination and what we can do and how we can serve neighborhoods and so forth. So we look forward to bringing some more about that as well, because that's one of our AARP fund, our American Rescue Fund projects as well. So,
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
Well, first by Mr. Harbin, second by Mr. Newton. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you, Mr. Bevel. Our next item is request consideration to purchase a vacuum truck for the sewer department. Mr. McEwen.
Okay, Mr. Art Garrison is here tonight, and he's going to present this request to you, critical request.
Good evening, y'all. Basically, our collection sewer personnel is asking for approval to purchase a vac truck. Basically, this vac truck, you've probably seen it around town, but it stays on the road 24/7. It's a day-to-day operations. We use it for stop-ups. Our current truck is a 2012 model. Basically, third time in the shop in the past 4 months. So we've been back and forth. So it's getting to where its useful life is pretty much done. For $20,000 since September 2021 on repairs. When it does go to the shop, we're faced with about a $14,000 per month rental fee that we have to pay. Basically, truck is no longer reliable for daily use, and we're solicited bids out for it. JetVac company out of Sumter, South Carolina, won the bid at $430,000. And approval tonight to replace this truck and use our other one as a backup when needed.
Thank you, sir. Any comments, questions?
What question?
Yes, sir, Mr. Stewart.
What is our current truck that we have? Our current truck, is it a jet vac or a vac all?
2012 vac all.
Is there any difference between a vac all and a jet vac as far as a Ford and a Chevy? I don't know,
Yes, sir. A little different, a lot more horsepower, a lot more vacuum suction, a lot more pressure, more hose, several different items that we added to it. One was a lateral reel, so when we do come up to a resident's house, instead of having to pull that heavy hose in front, we can pull a small lateral reel to take care of the stoppage. So there's a lot of benefits, just a whole lot better piece of equipment.
What would you do with the old, truck?
Basically, we want, we just have got it out of the shop last week, so this was another $25,000 bill that we had. A lot of computer, turbo issues that we have with it. I want to utilize it for, backup and for plant use. So when the guys at the plant need it for emergency, they've got it there. When mine's on the road, when the new one's on the road being used for the citizens and cleaning daily lines, and we've got that one available. That too, and plus when it goes in service. So it's reliable. The new one is not reliable. The new one is going to be a good, reliable source for us. So for one used every now and then is good.
And with that, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve this.
First by Mr. Horben, the second by Dr. Thompson. Discussion, Mr. Roberts.
I have a question. You mentioned that it has a capability of cleaning lateral lines, maybe back to a residence. Do we do that? Or do you stay in the manhole to manhole lane? And
so currently, if we pull up to a resident right now and say it's a citizen that has a clean out right there close, if we can do that, if there is a clean out there, to help the citizens out, we'll do our best to try to unstop it. We check our main line. If our main line's flowing good, if we have no clean out, there's nothing for us there to do, then no, we will not. But we will do everything we can to help the citizen out as far as to clean the lateral.
convenient clean out.
To the property line. So
my neighbor had a backup. She had to call Road. Before she got through with him, it was over $1,000.
Yep. That's true. There's actually an insurance rider now that can cover that. But anyway. Go ahead, Ms. Stewart.
Actually, you know, I think I've got a citizen right now on East Market Street where she don't have a clean out, you know, in front of her house. But I think we got a problem maybe with lines. So when they're using the backhoe to clean the line back, it's flowing all the debris back into her house, you know, and that's the difference from not having a clean out versus having a clean out. So if there's any AARP funds to help people get clean out plugs, I'm sure it'll save us a lot of bills from cleaning out people's houses when it floods back.
people and just trying to, you and I spoke, you know, about it and just trying to get them to understand the importance of having that clean out.
Yep. Thank you.
Good point. I had a first and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you, sir. Our next item of new business is request consideration of a contract for the comprehensive plan. And we actually heard this in executive session.
Contractual matters, and we needed to receive the receipt of legal advice too. So this was an item that we discussed in executive session, and then also we have the background, some additional information as well for you that we can present to you.
Thank you.
Call on Mary Haley Thompson.
Thank you so much. So as Anderson is in the midst of one of its most significant growth patterns in decades, it is important to pursue and support strategic growth to ensure its success for future generations. So we, as the City of Anderson, will undergo a public process to develop a new comprehensive plan, which is the single most important document for managing growth in a city or county. The plan will be forward-thinking and address anticipated growth in a way that ensures Anderson is the most desirable city in the region. The process will include the inventory, analysis, and synthesis of information and recommendations with a strong emphasis on land use, planning, infrastructure, economic and community development, recreation, and housing. And elements such as the land use plan will help guide the direction of many projects that will be coming before you all in the years to come and serve as a development roadmap. The comprehensive plan will be developed pursuant to the state enabling legislation known as the South Carolina Local Government Comprehensive Planning Enabling Act of 1994, and the plan will include but not be limited to the following planning elements: population, economic development, natural resources, cultural resources, community facilities, housing, land use, transportation, priority investment, and resiliency. In September of 2021, staff published a request for qualifications on local, state, and national platforms. And as a result, we received 8 submissions from professional firms from all over the country. Staff conducted virtual interviews with 5 of the professional firms in October of 2021, and the final 2 candidates each participated in a 2-day in-person interview process held in November and December of 2021. With that, staff recommends Housia Levine Associates as the selected firm for this project. The award-winning urban planning and design firm is one of the most experienced and reputable firms in the country. Based out of Chicago, Illinois, with offices in Pasadena, California, they have worked with over 400 communities on just over 450 plans. Their innovative public engagement approach, groundbreaking technology and mapping tools, and broad-based experience with communities across the country will ensure Anderson's comprehensive plan is the best of its kind. The contract will feature the included scope of work, which includes the comprehensive plan and unified development ordinance, budget, and timeline to complete the project, and this project will be funded over 3 fiscal years. And there are a lot of city staff members working on this project, so myself, David McEwen, Andrew Strickland, Beth Batson, and Maurice McKenzie, and we are all here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. That was pretty comprehensive. And we did a work session, but I'll open it up to council. I know that was a lot. Go ahead, Mr. Stewart.
Just have one quick question. Again, I think it's great. I think that we need to, move forward with coming up with a comprehensive plan. I think it kind of goes back to what we talked about tonight is being able to shape the way our community looks in the future. And but the only question that I have is, again, and I'm not going to hold it up. I just wanted some clarification, maybe tomorrow or whatever, but the travel expenses, the breakout of community outreach travel expenses which was the add-ons. And the first sentence says the table below identifies anticipated travel costs per outreach task. Well, this company, of course, is out of Chicago. They fly down for each task. Well, to do it like a project initiation, they're charging $1,400 to come down here. That's their travel expenses. Well, they're coming down here under task number 3 to do an analysis. They're at $1,000. Well, you're still flying from Chicago to the same place. Then the next time they fly down, it's $3,100. So I'm trying to get the rationale how they're coming up with these travel costs, because it's per task, and I think they're 7 tasks. But don't need an answer tonight. Just let me, just get back with me and let me know. But whatever it takes to get them down, I think is great, and I'm all in support of it.
Any other questions?
Why are we
Ms. Roberts?
over a 2-year payout?
Update that from the 2 fiscal years to 3 fiscal years. Was that your question?
Breaking it out because
Why? Just length of time. It's not an overnight plan. It's going to take about 1.5 years to really put everything together. 1.5 years, maybe even 2 years. So we're not going to charge all that at once, basically, in 1 fiscal year. Because we can, so we will.
Yeah. 3 years, not 2?
That has been updated with all of these budget meetings that the city managers and finance department have had the last few weeks. So that's been budgeted over 3.
Because it includes right now, so if you were approved now, we get started. So it's a little bit of money right now in this fiscal year, but then we start fresh again July 1st. So then that full fiscal year and the next one, of course, as they continue to bill for their services. So we've just budgeted in over those fiscal years appropriately.
That's great. And I'm all in favor of it. So I'll yield to someone else.
Anybody else? Ms. Lockridge?
This has nothing to do, as far as the company itself, have they ever done a city within the state of South Carolina?
They've done one in Summerville, South Carolina, that was just adopted in 2021, I believe, and we spoke to the planning director in Summerville, and they spoke very highly of their experience.
Friends there, so.
They're excited to continue their experience in South Carolina, especially with Anderson. That's a great question.
places too.
And I want to add on to that too, because North Carolina has more cities than really anywhere in the southeast. They've done a lot of work there, but they really want to have a big focus on the southeast, and they've been working in the region for a while. So,
Thank you. Anything else? Yes, sir, I do.
Did Mr. Stewart make?
Nope, nobody made it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve this, please.
And I second.
First by Mr. Harbin, a second by Mr. Lockridge. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Thank you, Ms. Thompson. The last item of new business is request consideration and appointment for a municipal judge. Ms. McCune.
Yes, sir. Section 58.2 specifies that municipal judges shall be appointed by council for a term not less than 2 years, no more than 4 years by state law and also within our code. This would be a good time to go into executive session to further discuss this.
Thank you, sir. First by Mr. Stewart, second by Dr. Thompson. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We stand in executive session. Second. So we're out of executive session, and we had a first by Mr. Lockridge, a second by Mr. Stewart. And it was voted on unanimously to come out of executive session. In executive session, we had a personnel matter relating to employment appointments and compensation pertaining to the municipal court, and it dovetailed into item number 5, which is a request consideration of an appointment of a municipal judge, and I would open that up for discussion.
After I have a discussion, let you make that, since you brought it up, let you make that motion.
Mr. Mayor, you know, before I make the motion, I'd just like to say that as serving on city council for 22 years, you know, there's been a lot of historic changes that I've seen over the last 22 years, from development to seeing our first African-American mayor being elected. And I look forward tonight to being a part of another part of history in the city of Anderson, is seeing our first African-American female judge being appointed by the city of Anderson. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Ms. Carolyn Galloway to be our next municipal judge.
First by Mr. Stewart.
It's my great privilege to second that motion.
I have a second by Dr. Thompson. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Welcome, Ms. Galloway.
Judge Galloway.
He will have to come before you.
Motion that we adjourn.
We have a first by Mr. Stewart, second by Mr. Newton. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? We stand adjourned.